This is the last video in this front axle series, and this one's going to be focused on all the parts and pieces to put together this crossover steering setup. Alright, I got the old steering box off, so now it's time to check the frame. I want to inspect the frame because these frames are notorious for having cracks that kind of emanate out from the bolt holes here. So this frame looks really good. I don't see any cracks. So supposedly, if a frame's in good shape like this, you don't really need the braces. But for anybody who knows me, you know we're putting the braces on. Come on. I always try to do things right, do it once, do it right the first time, so I don't have to come back and do it again later. So I'm going to grind all this down. I test fitted these. One goes across the top and one goes on the bottom. And they don't really match the frame at all. They're way off, so I'm gonna have to clamp them down and just weld a little at a time, just keep clamping and welding. I'll show you. Put some bolts through this first plate to hold it on, and just want to show you that's how well it matches the contour of the frame. It's not great, and it's also pretty thin. It's like maybe an 1/8 inch, if that. I was thinking it'd be like twice as thick as that. So I'm gonna have to put a C-clamp around this and just clamp this tight and just stitch weld it little by little, so I'll show that. Put some clamps on there, that pulls it in tighter. Still not great, but it's gonna have to be good enough. They don't want this welded solid all the way around. They want it kind of stitch welded like that all the way along, just little by little. So I'm going to keep doing that until it's all done. Okay, I've got these plates welded on, both the top one and the bottom one. See, I stitch welded it all the way around. I welded it up against that support over there too. Sorry about the shadow. Alright, I got the gearbox all bolted up here. This is a Borgeson Street and Performance quick ratio box, the one I went with. I was going to do the red top, but I found out that the red tops are all remanufactured. People send in cores and they rebuild them. If you happen to get a good one, they're great, but some people get these with leaks and other problems because they just weren't built with a very good core. So the Borgeson unit is brand new. It's 400 and something, so it's a little more expensive than the red top, but I wanted to go with a brand new one so I didn't have to deal with any of those issues. Okay, next step. Got to put the pitman arm on the bottom of the steering box. In order to do that, we need to make sure this thing is centered. So what I'm going to do is look at this little dot on top of here. I'm going to turn this thing, if I can, all the way in one direction till it stops right there. And the dot is pointed straight up. Now I'm going to turn it all the way, see how many turns it is all the way to the other direction. There's one turn, two turns, three turns on the dot. So this is a quick ratio box, so it's only 3 turns from lock to lock. So that means to split the difference, I need to turn this 1.5 turns, and it should be exactly in the center. So there's one turn, and right about there is a half. So that's 1.5 turns. Now I can put the pitman arm and I'll just point it straight back. And that should leave us with a nicely centered steering wheel. All right, you got the torque wrench set to 192 foot-pounds for this. There we go. Whew. Next, I'm going to be working on this tie rod. Tie rod is what connects the two front wheels together, and there's tie rod ends on there. So when I ordered all the crossover steering stuff from ORD, I got two beefy upgraded tie rod ends, but I was kind of dumb. I didn't recognize that one of my tie rod ends has a built-in hole in it. That's for the steering stabilizer. So one of these I can't use. So I'm going to be dealing with this setup. This one I got from the parts store. It's got the hole in it. And this is the off-road design. And then I'm just going to have it extra. So off-road design, I really like their stuff. No matter what you order from them, it comes with a really complete set of instructions. And all their stuff is high quality. I don't think they sell anything Chinese. You know, all the bearings I ordered, they showed up. They were Timken. So good quality brands. They even give you Kevlar boots. So you're supposed to take the stock boot off of these things and put the Kevlar ones on. So I'm going to get these swapped over to the tie rod, and then we'll get the tie rod on the truck. I didn't change this to a high steer because I didn't want to buy two knuckles. I wanted to buy one. So I bought this Reed Racing knuckle over here on the passenger side. It was 400 and some bucks. So I did not want to have to buy a second one. So this is going in standard location. From the bottom up. You can get them from the top down if you want, or you can go high steer, which would take this whole bar and put it above the leaf spring. So if I wanted to spend more money, I could have done that, but mainly the reason for high steer is if you're off-roading a lot and you don't want to hit this bar on a rock since it's down so low. That would be a reason to go high steer. For me, it's not a big deal. It's going to be a street truck. Not planning on doing a whole lot of off-roading with it, so this low position will be fine. It's at 45 foot-pounds. Alright, I'm going to put these big old studs in that knuckle, and the instructions say they recommend to use Loctite on them, but before I put the Loctite on these, it would be kind of pointless if I didn't clean the threads. Look at that. Most factory bolts come with oil on the threads, so no point putting Loctite on there. It's not going to hold. So make sure you clean the threads. I put some carb cleaner on there, and then I stick my fingernail right down in one of the threads, and then I just turn. Alright, they say to Loctite these in, but don't crank them tight. Just hand tight is enough. I'm using red Loctite because obviously I don't ever want them to come out. Here goes our big crossover steering arm. And then we've got these conical inserts that go down in there. This is getting fun now, seeing all this finally coming together after all this time. I've been working on that motor for like a month. So I kept running into problems and issues and having to order parts and figure out things, get everything to work. The motor's pretty much done now. Just waiting for the dyno. So now I'm working on finishing up suspension here. All right, so these are supposed to go to 110 foot-pounds. Any of you guys never seen a torque wrench before? It's got numbers on it, foot-pounds. I think it's got probably Newton meters on the other side for Europeans. So basically you unscrew it, set this to 0. The lowest setting on this torque wrench is 25 foot-pounds because this is a big torque wrench. So that's 25 foot-pounds. That'd be 35, 45, and that's 50. And you can see there's a line that points to 50. Okay, any of these fasteners that don't have a locking pin like that, it's always a good idea to mark them. Use a paint pen like this, and just put a line across that and then down the nut. Then at any time in the future, you can just kind of crawl under here and take a look. If those lines don't line up, then you know your nut's coming loose. Okay, so now it's time for the drag link that goes from right here over to the steering box. So we can see now that drag link kind of bends up on this side to connect to the pitman arm. So that wraps up the crossover steering. The only points of note really are, this is a two-wheel drive box. You know it's two-wheel drive because it's got a spline shaft here and a nut. The old one, the four-wheel drive boxes, don't have a spline shaft and they don't have a nut on the bottom. They're just a smooth shaft with a groove in the middle, and then they have a bolt that goes through. And then they have this kind of horseshoe-shaped thing. I just cut those bolts off and just kind of leveled them off and painted over them. So that's it. You got your drag link, your new box and pitman arm, and then a tie rod across the front here. That's about it. So crossover steering's not as complicated as it might seem. In the next video, I'm going to go over replacing this shaft here. This is the Jeep XJ style shaft with the universal joints here instead of the rag joint. It just gives you a tighter steering feel. It's a collapsible shaft. So I'll go over you have to cut that down and drill a couple holes to install that, and then how to remove and replace this bearing here that's kind of at the base of the steering column. I'll show you how to take that apart and replace it. See you in the next one.